Now, the government has come under fire after refusing to hold a public inquiry into historic sexual abuse by grooming gangs in Oldham.
Yes, this decision has been made, a letter that was written by Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister, and Elon Musk has attacked this decision as disgraceful. Kemi Badenoch has also said that a full national inquiry into rape gangs is long overdue, and yes, Jess Phillips insisted it was for Oldham Council alone to decide whether to launch an investigation into alleged exploitation between the years of 2011 and 2014.
Well, joining us now is the Labour Party activist Chris Worrall. Chris, do you think Jess Phillips has missed the mark here?
No, not at all. I think, the precedent's been set with Rotherham and Telford, who have, with the J inquiry, they've been, undertaken before. You had the wider J inquiry, if we're looking at Kemi Badenoch there talking about what's not gone further enough. We've had 14 years to sort this out. And ultimately, we need to have a zero-tolerance approach to these grooming gangs. And I think the Labour Party have recognised, was it 1 in 6, the J inquiry found, of children, women, girls, being affected by child sexual abuse. And, the Labour Party is committed to putting those recommendations forward. That does acknowledge, in the J inquiry, abilities to take if there's a further action needed, to take that forward. So Jess Phillips is one of the biggest experts on violence against women and girls. So
the J inquiry talks a lot about exploitation within the Church of England, within the Catholic Church, within sort of private family households. I think what a lot of campaigners want to look at is the specific issue of grooming gangs in towns, particularly in some northern and Midlands towns in the UK. And the J inquiry was a much broader inquiry than that issue.
Well, that's right. The J inquiry was broader than that, but previous to that, you had the J inquiry into Rotherham, which then led to the wider one. What we've also had is, you've got to remember, Keir Starmer in 2013 was the one who, enacted the review into Rochdale. He also opened and paved the way for historic reviews that has led to the ones that we've seen. And he's also done an overhaul of the CPS. And at the end of the day, if we're looking at what the Labour Party's doing under Jess Phillips and Yvette Cooper in the Home Office, we're bringing in new protection orders. They're looking at the systemic failures that have occurred in the policing. They're putting more funding into policing. At the end, we've seen ultimately a lack of political will.
But if this was a big enough issue in Jess Phillips' eyes, and she wanted to make sure that justice was served and those who were implicated in this were dealt with, heads may roll, of course, then surely she would want to escalate this to a national inquiry, and it would not be for Oldham Council alone to deal with, surely.
She in opposition...
It needs to be independent, does it not?
Well, she was one of the ones, Labour in opposition, called for the J inquiry. She's spoken at this at length. She's spoken about all the cases in her own constituency. Jess Phillips is definitely the right person to lead on this. Her calling for Oldham to look into its own systemic failings is the first port of call. That's what's happened in Rochdale, what's happening at Rotherham and Telford. And this seems like the natural step. And if there are going to be implementations of the J inquiry, these things will come off the back of that. And if you want my honest opinion, you've got the McAllister review, so that's Josh McAllister, Labour MP, who's looking into unregulated care homes. These issues are a lot deeper than just, gathering data for ethnicity, which, may or may not be coming out as recommendations. Who knows?
Well, let's broaden this discussion out. With us, of course, Alexander Armstrong and Benjamin Butterworth. Alex, let's start with you. This is a story that has gone on and on. It burst into the national conversation in 2013, 2014. But in your view, have governments done enough to get to the root cause of this?
No, absolutely not. Everybody, it's as light as day that the Tories have failed for 14 years to tackle this issue and implement the recommendations of multiple different reviews and inquiries. Labour... And unfortunately, I couldn't disagree more with you. I think Jess Phillips is a massive hypocrite. She has called she called the last government shrugging its shoulders, is what she used to describe the previous government in her debate in 2021. Well, she's right. She said because they did nothing, and she's refusing to do something today. She has the power to utilise the weapons of government, to give it resources, to give it capital, to get this finally into the light and let the public see it for what it is. She's refusing to do that. She's saying, no, sorry, by the way, I ignored your emails for quite a while. I'm getting to it today and I'm telling you I don't want to do anything about this. And that is absolutely reprehensible for a woman who has made political football out of this issue time and time again. And if she's not going to get on top of it today, and unfortunately many people are quite rightly calling for her to resign, including Elon Musk.
Well, that's another point, isn't it? The length of time it apparently took her to respond to the calls for this type of inquiry. 3 months. That's not acceptable, really, if it's your top priority.
Well, you say that, but I mean, this abuse occurred between 2011 and 2014, and the Conservatives didn't deal with it in 10 years.
Continue today.
Exactly, and I do actually think it's a mistake. I think there should be a national inquiry, because clearly it is a pattern of behaviour that was able to go ahead because of institutional failings. Well, when you have institutional failings, you need something above to look into it in order to fix that. But the decision she made was the same decision that had been made for councils to hold their own investigations before. So you can see why she looked at this and followed the same proceedings that her predecessors in
But she can't then sit there and say the government shrugged its shoulders and hasn't done anything if she's choosing to take the same action as the previous government who also failed to do that. She can't be a hypocrite, which is exactly what she's being.
Alicia Kearns did say, she's the shadow of Jess Phillips, a Conservative. She did say that the grooming gang task force, for example, 550 people arrested off the back of that. That was a Conservative-led project. But does Jess Phillips have to prove something here? She is supposed to be safeguarding women and children. If she's not raising this to the top priority with Keir Starmer, her boss, then, is that not a failure?
She's raised this her whole career. Keir Starmer has done it as a CPS when he stepped in. The sort of, nonsense claims here about that we need another national inquiry when we've already had one 2 years ago.
That she may be shying away from the fact that these grooming gangs are predominantly Pakistani men, and that might upset some people in the constituency and others.
She's worked very closely.
Matters,
she's worked very closely with Sarah Champion and Rotherham. She's very close to these issues. I think getting to where it needs to be is not just looking at ethnicity. We need to look at the unregulated care homes. We need to. What the Labour Party is doing is embedding sexual abuse specialists in 909 call centres, so victims are referred straight away to support services that they need. So it's not just the police. There's these sort of prevention orders that are coming in. They're basically there to manage offenders proactively, and the Labour Party is taking action on this, so to consider that they're not, it's just a complete nonsense claim.
Oldham Council, which is a Labour council, has asked twice for support from government to do this.
Why can't they do it themselves like everyone else?
Why should they? If they're asking government, they're asking a Labour government for help dealing with this. You lot are sat there shrugging your shoulders at the biggest scandal to face British people in decades. You are. You're doing just as little as the Tories are doing. You're absolutely reprehensible for defending Jess Phillips today. Everyone should be coming out here and saying we need to do more to fix this issue.
Okay, well, it's passions are flaying.
And we did mention that grooming gangs task force. It's important to note that was set up in the wake of Charlie Peters' reporting.
Absolutely.
Acknowledged by the government ministers at the time that was set up. But for their part, the Home Office today have said no child should suffer sexual abuse or exploitation. Everyone who is responsible for children's welfare must learn from past mistakes and do everything possible to prevent future failures.
And yes, to the council's request, Jess Phillips acknowledged the strength of feeling that a further inquiry into child sexual exploitation in Oldham should be undertaken. In letters to the council executive, Phillips apologised for delays in responding, but maintained that local authorities should take the lead, saying it is for Oldham Council alone to decide to commission an inquiry into child sexual exploitation locally rather than for the government to intervene. She also welcomed the council's resolution to continue its work with victims and survivors.
Well, for their part, an Oldham Council spokesman said survivors sit at the heart of our work to end child sexual exploitation. Whatever happens in terms of future inquiries, we have promised them that their wishes will be paramount and we will not renege on that pledge.
OK, and GB News also understands that Oldham Council has since been in contact with Telford, which face similar issues to explore various inquiry options.